Thank you, Brooke. All right, so hi everyone. Welcome in to another Friends from the Field. My name is Leah Gavan, and I am the Administrative Coordinator at Island Heritage Trust. I'm joined today by my co-host Brooke, who is the Education and Outreach Coordinator at Blue Hill Heritage Trust. So Friends from the Field, it's co-sponsored by our organizations and it's made possible by our generous donors. So we thank everyone for joining today and supporting our work. Before I introduce our awesome speaker today, I'm just going to hand it over to Brooke, who's going to give us some reminders about expectations around using Zoom and communicating with us. So handing it over to you, Brooke.
All right, thank you, Leah. So we will have time for questions at the end of the webinar. So if you type questions throughout, we'll probably save them for the end, and Leah and I will take turns handing them over to Karen so she can answer them. To give us questions, if you hover your mouse over the bottom of your screen, there's a toolbar that will pop up and you'll see Q&A, so you can pop your questions in there. If you're more used to using the chat box, that's fine too. So either one of those, just put your questions in there and we'll get to them at the end.
Great, thank you, Brooke. So today we have the pleasure of welcoming Maine Master Naturalist Karen Johnson, who is going to tell us about spring awakening at the Orono Bog Boardwalk as ferns start to unfurl and skunk cabbage emerges and blossoms appear. So it's an exciting time of year. Karen has been a docent at the boardwalk for several years, and she never tires of walking the 1-mile loop to see what's new. She's going to share our findings with all of us today while we get excited for the boardwalk to open this year. So handing it over to you, Karen. Thank you again for being here with us.
Okay, thank you very much. And we were just talking about Friends from the Field, this awesome effort of the Blue Hill Heritage Trust and the Island Heritage Trust. They started it during COVID. I did speak during COVID a while back, how COVID changed my life. We all thought COVID was going to be really awful, but some good things did come out of COVID. One of them being the ability to Zoom anywhere in the world. Just this week, I was in London with the Linnean Society looking at what to do with mosses, with the life in mosses. It was a fabulous seminar. So now, after COVID, when the boardwalk reopened, I started to be a docent there. It takes a while to learn things. I'm a Maine Master Naturalist, not a botanist, not an ecologist. I majored in zoology, but that was years ago, and everything's changed since then. So I love going to the boardwalk now. I live very close to it. The boardwalk will be opening on around May 1st. They really hope to have it open May 1st every year. So now I'm going to advance my slides, I hope. Except it's not working. Oh, there. Thank you. So the boardwalk is a registered natural landmark. In 1974, that happened because it is such a unique landscape. So when the boardwalk opens on May 1st, it will likely look like this. It will be a sunny day, and there will be skunk cabbages. I think you can see my cursor. So bright green skunk cabbages all over, along with the green conifers. And of course, the green mosses will be all over the place. A few months later, it will be totally green. I want you to note here the intermediate interrupted fern right here in the front of the boardwalk, because we'll talk about that. Because I'm going to start with talking about ferns, because that's my favorite part of spring, watching the ferns unfurl. The boardwalk opens May 1st. I'm sure all the people are in there now cleaning up the boardwalk. I don't know how much damage happened last year, but some years it's pretty awful. A lot of trees are down and they have to maintain them in the woodland part of the boardwalk. But then you can walk along the boardwalk and get out into the actual bog. There's a lot of information at the boardwalk. This shows like what the boardwalk consists of. It's a vegetation map, and it's right at the entryway of the boardwalk. The boardwalk, the Orono Bog is surrounded by a lag, this dark brown line, which is where the water drains out of the bog. It's a raised bog. There's no water that flows into the bog. It only gets its water from rainwater. And then, but sometimes there's a lot of rainwater, so it does drain out into the lag. And that's the first part of the boardwalk you walk over is the lag where you'll see all the standing water. Then you walk through a mixed wooded fend, a conifer wooded fend, a wooded shrub heath. Into the center of the bog, which is the pink area, is the moss lawn. And that's where you can really appreciate the sphagnum moss that composes the whole lawn of the boardwalk. Skunk cabbage are out now. If you are lucky enough to know a place to see the skunk cabbage, you can go watch how fast they grow. They are beautiful flowers in the spring, composed. They're in the Aracea family, the arum family. So they have a spathe and a spadex. The spadex part is like the covering of the flower. And inside is the spadex, which is where the fertile parts are, pollen and the ovary. And of course, we're starting here to see some of the mosses that occur in the boardwalk that are now when you're walking in the woods and you see the beautiful green mosses, just appreciate that we live in Maine and have those all around us. The calla lily is also in the same family as the skunk cabbage. And it has a spathe, the white part, and the spadex is its fertile parts in the middle. And there are some of these calla lilies in the lag right when you're walking into the boardwalk. And when you walk into the boardwalk, you start to see the croziers of the ferns. These are royal fern croziers. They grow really fast on their tufts. They have circinate vernation. That's how they grow. They grow really fast, like these are like a foot tall within a week the next time you go to see them. And then by the time they're 2 feet tall, these ferns start to have their sporangia develop. This bright green stuff is the sporangia where their spores are forming. And the spores are green. So inside these sporangia, the spores are ready to erupt. The sporangia get pretty tall. And they're green, and then when the spores are gone, they're just brown. So they look like little crowns. That's why this is called royal fern. Royal fern, it doesn't really look like a fern. It's just like this leafy thing. Can be confused with other plants, but when you see these things on the top, those are the sporangia. And right when you go into the bog, the royal ferns are everywhere all along the boardwalk. And they are very persistent. They're royal sporangia persists for a long time. They're attached right to the fertile frond. The fertile frond will have the sporangia. The sterile fronds just have leaves. This is all brief fern education for you. The other fern that's there in the boardwalk is the cinnamon fern. And they start out with little, very protective in a covering of paper, but each one of these is the going to be a leaf, either a fertile leaf or a sterile leaf. They grow really fast as well. Their sterile leaves are just going to be leaves of fern. The fertile part, the fertile frond, is going to become the cinnamon stick. So there's circinate vernation. These are all unfurling sterile leaves. The fertile part is already developing the spores, the green spores in the covering. So the leaves grow really fast, and this is a more typical looking fern plant. You can tell that's a fern, just how its leaves are growing up, and then these fertile fronds keep getting bigger, and they start releasing their spores as well. So at the bottom here, the green spores have been released. At the top, the green spores are still in there. So the cinnamon sticks then are there once all the spores are released. And this all happens really quickly, like within the first month of when you start going into the bog. But there are many cinnamon ferns. And then these cinnamon sticks do eventually, you don't see them anymore by the end of the first couple of months. Another feature that a cinnamon fern has is a little tuft of hair at the base of its pinnules on the stalk. So you can look for that. That's always fun to see as a field mark of cinnamon fern that is persistent. Interrupted fern, like I showed you, is right at the beginning of the bog. It's not in the bog. It's not really a plant of the wetlands, but these are at my house. They're very similar to the cinnamon ferns, but these are the interrupted ferns. They're a very fuzzy fern, but they grow really fast. And the interrupted fern has the sporangia right on the stalk of the stem. So they are like black. That's the dark green spores are in there. This is what they look like close up. The little sporangia full of many dark green spores, and the spores are green. I was just did this experiment one night, and the spores just shoot out there. Another fern that likes the wetlands is the sensitive fern. So they make their sporangia. There's the sterile leaf is just the sensitive fern leaf. The fertile leaves are really unique, and you've seen them all over the place. These are all over Maine, but they're also in the bog, and they also have green spores. Green spore here, but these are very persistent, and the fertile part of the plant is persistent. These spores are not released until the next year. So the sensitive fern is related to the fiddlehead fern that we all like to eat in the spring. This has the same kind of more ferny looking plant, but these grow along the shores of our rivers around here. They're in the floodplains of the rivers, so there's none of these in the bog. They are not a bog plant, but they are related to the sensitive fern, and there's a lot of sensitive fern in the bog. There's also a lot of marsh fern. I just keep looking for the croziers of the marsh fern, but they are just really hard to see. But you will see them right along the lag, along the boardwalk. Marsh fern, they have that's what they look like. This is the root of a cinnamon fern. I took a fern course at Eagle Hill last year with Robin Moran about ferns and quillworts. A very nice course if you have the time to take it. And so he had someone dig up a cinnamon fern. To live in the bog, because it's so wet, you need really special features and really kind of ecological things to do, like this special kind of root system. which is called an Arancema. So he cut it in half, and then it's just the most beautiful thing I've seen, starch and all the things, so that this plant can live in the water in an anoxic environment, but still produce its get its gases. And a lot of plants have this kind of root when they live in the aquatic and wetland areas. So out in the bog, all the red is the sphagnum moss, which is out there. And that's what makes the lawn. There's really not much soil out in the bog. And we'll talk about the sphagnum, and this is the shrub heath. A lot of these plants are black spruce. So in the spring, they're like bright green because the tips, they've just started growing. And the other plant that's here is the leatherleaf. The leatherleaf is a big component of the Orono bog. It's a big component in a lot of bogs. And we'll talk more about that. So what's new in the bog? Like why I go every month, why I go every year, because you never know what you're going to see. This was 2 years ago in May of 2023. Walking along the lag, there's this tip up that has been there for years. And usually you're walking through the lag, it's May 1st, there's a lot of water there. And so you just examine this, what's new at that place. So last year, when we went in, that water was missing, and you could already see the sphagnum moss that's there at the bottom of the tip up. A couple weeks later, I went back, and I was with a friend of mine, Julie, who said, "Hey, what are those little orange things?" So these little orange things are fungi that are called swamp beacon or bog beacon, Myrula pellucidosa, a type of fungus. So that was just stunning. I had never seen that before. So, you know, there's always something you're going to see at the bog. These are sphagnum moss, the green things. The sphagnum moss has capitulum. They hold like 20 times their weight in water. They are mostly water. They're well adapted to being in a bog, and they make all the peat moss. There's like 40 different kinds of sphagnum that are around in the bog. No, in Maine, and about 14 different kinds that are around in the bog. But it was just wonderful to see these swamp beacons. So I can't wait to see if they're going to be there this year. What's that tip up going to be like this year? Very excited to go see that when the bog opens around May 1st, hopefully. They usually post on Facebook when it's going to open, so I will be looking for that. So when you get out into the bog, there's a moss lawn right in the center of the bog. And it's hummocks of mosses where leatherleaf can grow. The leatherleaf is an ericaceous plant. Most of the plants that grow in the bog are ericaceous. They have special ericaceous mycorrhizae associated with their roots so that they can live there in the bog. And the peatlands are water-soaked areas. So the plant growth exceeds the decomposition of the organic matter. And that's what makes the bog, the peat bog, very deep. There's like 20 feet of peat in this area if you went down. And that's where the peat moss is. Peat moss out here, there's a lot of red. It's very pretty and shiny and beautiful. All these little plants are the leatherleaf. They make shrubs, but they start out as little plants. And then the tiny little leaves are the cranberry. And there's a remnant cranberry from last year that didn't get eaten yet. And all these little mosses have a capitulum. There's different kinds. There's little shrubs that live in here. Again, there's no nutrients. So everything is very small out in the middle of the bog. They can still live there because they're ericaceous. They've got the fungi to help them, but there's not a lot of nutrients out in the bog because the nutrients are only there with rainwater. This is a leather leaf. It's the first plant to bloom when you go into the bog on May 1st. It will be blooming. So it can be a big shrub. It has bell-shaped flowers and thick leather leaves that help it survive in the bog. They don't get desiccated. There's also the cranberry in the bog that we already talked about a bit, and these are the flowers of the cranberry. Another family in the ericaceous. These are small cranberry, the Vaccinium oxycosis, and they can spread by layering. And they're very tiny flowers. You can see, yeah. So that's why you go to the bog to look for what's blooming. When are the cranberry flowers going to be there? This is high bush blueberry. It also likes wet areas. So it will be in the bog blooming. It's one of the first shrubs to bloom in the bog. Another shrub are the bog laurels, the calmia. And there's a lot of sheep laurel in the bog, which sheep laurel will grow everywhere. But this calmia polifolio is bog American laurel. It's a small plant. It has some woody stems, but it's one of the first plants to be blooming in the bog. So the first laurel that you see is bog laurel, along with the sphagnum and the tufted and the tussock cotton sedge. Areophorum vaginatum. The tussock cotton sedge, and it forms on little tusks. Leather leaf flowers, and the tussock cotton sedge, one of the first plants to bloom in the bog. And since the bog is so poor in nutrients, some of the plants there are carnivorous, like the sundews. This is the roundleaf sundew, and the carnivorous plants trap some insects to help them with their nutrition. So the sundew is a perennial plant, and these are its leaves. So you just keep looking for when they appear, but they're so tiny and they're on their red sphagnum, so it's hard to see. But at some point, you can see, you'll notice the sundews. Then they put a little flower out, so then the flower stalk starts to develop in the middle of the plant as well. But the sundews, the insect will land on this, and it triggers 3 or 4 hairs, and it closes up, and that helps it get some nutrients to fortify itself. The sundews do bloom. They make a little stalk of flowers. Again, they're very tiny, and probably around July, you can go and look for the flowers of the sundew in the bog. And these are the roundleaf sundew. And so there's green sphagnum, red sundew, white flowers. These little things are the buds of flower buds of the sundew. There's also spatulate leaf sundew in the bog, and they're not a round shape, they're a spatulate shape. These are more uncommon, but the same idea. They're just sundews that are carnivorous plants. The other carnivorous plant in the bog is the bladderwort. Last year, there was so much bladderwort, more than we've ever had or noticed before in the bog for some reason. Utricularia cornuta, the horned bladderwort. You can really only see it when it's blooming because it just looks like some green grass otherwise. But they make big masses of flowers. The color is stunning, but you can see their stems are just like little tiny, tiny pieces of grass. The other plant, the carnivorous plant, is this one, the purple pitcher plant, Cernia purpurea. So they're also perennial plants. They have very thick roots. These are the leaves, and the leaves just form a like a little vase, and it gets filled with water. When you're a docent on the bog, you get to go around with a turkey baster, suck the water out of this plant, and usually you can see some mosquito larvae in there and other things. So there are some mosquitoes where their habitat is inside the pitcher plant. That happens in different places in the world. They're all colors of pitcher plant. We'll get to this flower later, but these are the pitcher plants. These are the dead leaves from last year. And these are the little buds. So you see the pitcher plants, and everyone starts waiting for the flowers of the pitcher plant to appear because they are just the most stunning flower that's out there. Totally unique in the bog. Again, the leaves and the pitcher plant on the stem, they're about a foot tall, and they will happen later in June. And then the leaves are very persistent in the fall, so all the pitchers will be here. This was last fall. You know, last summer was pretty dry, so the sphagnum dried up on the top. You know, it faded out, but underneath it's still holding all its water. And the pitcher plants were turning bright red. So it's very pretty. All of the black spruce still makes it a lovely color in the bog. This plant is bog rosemary. Bog rosemary is an obligate wetland plant. So it has to grow in a bog. It's the only place that you can see it. But it's in a lot of the bogs around here. It's not a rosemary plant at all. It just looks like it. So they call it bog rosemary. It's another ericaceous plant, Andromeda poliofolia. It has narrow leaves, and they're very leathery. They have a white underside. A lot of the leaves in a bog have a coating underneath to help them persist. These are the buds of the bog rosemary. The buds will be there like on May 1st. It's already getting ready to bloom. And then it starts to bloom. Its blue-green color stands out among the cranberry leaves, the leatherleaf leaves, and the beautiful pink flowers of the bog rosemary plant, which I just never get tired of looking at any of this. And then one of the very exciting plants in the bog is the bog bean, Menanthes trifoliata. There's a lot of this plant in the bog. More has been developing through the years as I've been going there. So it's got these little green leaves, like three leaves on the plant. And these white flowers will appear in June for a brief period. They are beautiful flowers and just have the fuzz and everything. So that is a really unique plant in the bog. The buck bean grow in shallow water, so there has to be water there. Extracts of the plant were once used to treat scurvy, and the leaves were sometimes used in Europe as a substitute for hops in beer. And it's related, it's in the family Nymphoides. Very few plants in Maine are Nymphoides. So I just wanted to show you its relative here in Maine, the little floating heart, which again has to be in a lake, and that's a Nymphoides, which is related to the buckbean. Rhodora is also in the bog. Rhodora is everywhere in our down east landscape. Our beautiful lavender flowers in the spring. And the bog boardwalk with the Rhodora, which is a rhododendron, Rhododendron canadense, Canada Rose Bay. It's a unique plant in Maine. People have come to visit here, like from Wisconsin, and they are thrilled if they can see the Rhodora. So just want you to appreciate that we have this plant for us to look at. Another rhododendron is the Rhododendron Groenlandia, the Labrador tea. These are its flowers here. They're very thick. Little rhododendron flowers, black spruce, and the rhododendron, and they have a thick brown hairs on the bottom of that plant. This was not from the bog, this was from a different place, but it's the same plant as the Labrador tea. And the fruits of this plant are very unique. They're the flowers are pretty brief, and then you get all the fruits, but the leaves are very this little star-shaped leaf form. It's very easy to recognize. There's also black chokeberry, Aronia, in the bog. Not much of it, but some, and it's easy to tell from, it can be confused with the Labrador tea, but it's easy to tell because it has the pink stamens on it. And there's not much of it, but when you see it, it's like, Aronia can be seen anywhere. It's not a bog plant, but it's in the rose family. There's also roses in the bog, the shining rose, Rosa nitida, and this blooms around June 19th. And it's along the boardwalk when you're first going in. On the right, there's a lot of roses. They just have a single bloom, but it's always nice to see roses. Then we'll get to the orchids. By the end of June, the orchids will starting to come out. This is the tuberous grass pink. Last year was a great year for the orchids. It's not always the case, so that's what's exciting about the bog. You go to see what's there. Grass pinks, they are in clumps or single plants. Then there's rose pogonia. Pogonia ophioglossoides, rose pogonia. And they are scattered throughout the bog. And then the next orchid that will appear is the white fringed bog orchid. And they have, they're smaller, have a different flower, but they are just orchids with their own unique, in their own unique family, which everyone loves. And they will be all over the bog. Which one on time? Good. So out in the moss lawn of the bog, the black spruce, which propagates by layering. The spruce will just form roots in the sphagnum where it is. There's different kinds of sphagnum. And there are the hummocks of sphagnum, which have different kinds of, there's like 3 different species of sphagnum moss from the top to the bottom. And the leatherleaf holds that in place, and the leatherleaf can live in there. So the sphagnum moss is a keystone ecotype. The sphagnum controls its environment by creating acidic, nutrient-poor, and waterlogged conditions, allowing it to dominate in bog environments. Sphagnum acts like a giant sponge, absorbing up to 20 times its own weight in water, which aids in flood mitigation and maintains consistent hydrology for other specialized species. The plant continues to grow upward on top of the peat it has already produced. So I tried to learn the sphagnum mosses. You know, there's maybe 14 kinds in the bog, but it's very hard. But these are all different species. So you can see they're growing at the top. They've got the capitulum. That's the main feature of a sphagnum moss. It's like a stem of a plant. Mosses are tiny plants with no roots. They just have chloroplast and can photosynthesize in their leaves. They don't need roots. The leaves are usually 1 cell thick. But you can see how they just keep growing. So I think of them as immortal plants. Like when does this plant die? It's living in the bog. It keeps getting taller and taller. The bottom doesn't really decompose. It's just wet, and it's acidic, so it just stays there, which is why the peat is such a persistent habitat around the world. So all different kinds. This is what they look like, the hooded sphagnums. This is like 1 leaf. It's full of water. If you ever want to take a moss workshop, it's just fascinating to do that. In the fall, there's a lot of huckleberry in the bog. So in the fall, it turns red. Larch turns yellow. The tamarack. There's a later sedge in the bog. There's birds in the bog. The Bangor, the Penobscot Valley Audubon Society will hold a bird walk in the bog. You can look for that in May, sometime in May. So this is a palm warbler with a insect in its beak. So that would be evidence of a breeding bird there. And there's several kinds of cotton sedge. This is the later one that will be in the bog. The tawny sedge. And that was snowing that day, so that was the end of the bog for the year with the tawny sedge. So that's my talk. I have finished it. And thank you for listening. And thank you for bearing with me as I tried to say too much stuff. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Karen. That was wonderful and such amazing pictures. I have a question. You touched on kind of this interesting fact that mosquitoes will lay their larvae in the pitcher plant.
Yep.
And like a lot of people, I'm fascinated by carnivorous plants. And so I was just wondering if, so the mosquitoes, they live within this pitcher plant, like their larva develops, they aren't consumed by the plant?
Right, so
Okay.
that is a mystery because the water's in there. I think probably mosquito larvae have a really brief, period. The egg is laid, the larva develops, and then the pupa develops. So yeah, they can do that. That just came out a few years ago about larvae who have their mosquitoes whose life cycle starts in a pitcher plant.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm curious too about I know you touched on some of the bird life that can be found in the bog.
Mhm.
Are there any I'm curious about any other animals that you've seen on your trips to the bog or any animals that are known to live in a habitat like that and what those might be.
Well, the bears like the boardwalk
Hmm.
a lot. I mean, there are animal trails through the bog that you see. And last year, in the early mornings in the fall, with the mud, the bear prints on the boardwalk from the mud, or if it was frost, the bear, would melt the frost, and they go in the morning and check the boardwalk, make sure everything's all right, and they would see bear tracks. So um, they posted signs, and a lot of school kids come to the bog, and so unfortunately they just had to cancel some of the school trips because the bears had been sighted. I mean, you just do because if there's bears there and if something ever happened, it would be doing. So yeah, there's bears there. Um, a lot of insects, dragonflies will be there. There is like a resident, um, yeah, I can't think of that word. So the signs have animals that live there, like there's voles and things like that. And I think some birds have been documented as living in the reproducing there. And definitely that palm warbler was one of them. Um, and the bears, there's hares, I think, will be in there. Probably raccoons. It's the boardwalk is closely associated with the Bangor City Forest. So it's probably raccoons probably would go in there too. Um, so there's voles in there, but it's not really rich habitat for mammals, because of the sphagnum. If they dig in the ground, it's going to be wet, not dry and cozy like in your field at home. Um, so just more about the leatherleaf. The leatherleaf has narrow leaves, which gives the plant its name. The Once the sphagnum moss is established, leatherleaf can move in and extend the range of a bog mat, providing stable habitat for other bog specialists, such as pitcher plants. Leatherleaf provides cover for nesting mallards and some other ducks. Not in this bog, I don't think, but probably for other birds, it might provide that kind of thing. It recovers quickly in peatlands that have been severely disturbed or mined for peat. So the leatherleaf and the sphagnum are just like intricately tied together, through the thousands of years that the peat bogs have been forming. That's why I just really appreciate the leatherleaf as a plant, as an ericaceous plant, and the sphagnum as a complex variety of mosses, like with different species. I showed the photo. Those are all different species of sphagnum moss.
Karen, we have quite a few questions for you. So Leah and I are going to take turns asking you things that came up from the audience. The first is there's somebody asking about lady slippers. If they're present, maybe if you haven't talked about them in this because they're not there, or maybe you're trying to protect them. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Not at all. There are lady slippers. There's a lot of lady slippers in the Bangor City Forest. And there's an upland area of the bog that you go over where there's lady slippers. So about a mile in, you can see lady slippers in the bog, like in, I think, around the first week of June when they're blooming. And there's some white ones in there and some pink ones. So yes, there is an upland habitat that has all of the plants that you would see in the woods. The lady slippers are orchids of the woods. They won't grow in a wetland. All those other orchids I showed you would grow in the wetland. But the lady slippers grow in the woods, and you can see some right along the boardwalk. So it's an easy way to see it. You walk there, and there's a station there, the upland station, and the lady slippers are there.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
All right. So next we have a comment that just says, thank you, Karen, for the informative talk and beautiful photos. This person is inspired to take more bog walks. So exactly like what you were hoping for, and inspiring people to get out and see the bog. So thank you. And then we have another question following. Someone is curious how you arrange for a guided bog walk.
The Orono Bog Boardwalk has a website, and on that website you can call up and ask for a guided tour. There are some really excellent botanists who are docents, so if you are a botanist and want a tour with a botanist, we can arrange that for you. School groups, the same way. You contact them and arrange for when the school groups can come in the spring, and it's at their website, Orono Bog Boardwalk.
Thank you. So the next question first says, thank you, Karen. This makes me excited to visit the bog. What is a raised bog versus other bogs? Do only raised bogs have legs?
Yeah, I think a raised bog, because the water drains off and that creates the lag. So I would say yes, only raised bogs have lags. The raised bog is because of the accumulation of the peat moss, as it keeps growing, as this immortal plant. I don't know when it dies, but it keeps growing, and so it gets very thicker. You can see it's thick, it raises up, makes the hummocks, and the leather leaf, helps expand that the floating bog that's going on there. So it's a unique thing. There's a Ron Davis. I didn't mention his name yet. I'm sorry, Ron. He's the one who started the implementation of getting the boardwalk built. He would take his classes into this area, and he didn't want to step on the plants, and mess it up. And who knew when you might step into a bog and sink, right? Bog bodies is a big thing. We some people like to talk about those. But he has a book called Bogs and Fens by Ronald B. Davis. It explains a lot about all the different ecology and how the bogs are formed. So it's a very good book. Like Suncaze Meadows is a big bog place. There's trails through there. The whole middle of Maine is really a bog system. It's the Caribou Penjajawak Bog system that the Orono Land Trust works on developing along with the University of Maine. And the Bangor City Forest is a big help with the Orono Bog Boardwalk. So there are lots of ways to get educated about it. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Other question we have here is, someone's wondering if there are any walkable bogs in the Blue Hill Peninsula or Deer Isle. And one example I can think of off the top of my head from the perspective of Island Heritage Trust is Shore Acres Preserve. Has some nice bog habitat that part of the trails go through. Brooke, if you wanted to add any thoughts from your perspective on Blue Hill?
I can't think of anything right now, but I can ask too.
Yeah, so bogs in Maine, so the Orono Bog, it's a national landmark. you know, people, I don't know if everyone who comes and looks at it appreciates that, but you all will now when you go. So thank you. And so it's like the best boardwalk that there is. The other bog that's closer is down at Quoddy Head, East Quoddy Head, where the lighthouse is, and you walk down that, and there's just a little unobtrusive when you're at the lighthouse and you go out and start walking along the trail, and over to the left there'll be a little sign that says bog, and you go over and there's a boardwalk at that bog. That bog is a really different bog. It's just fun to visit. And then if you go to Canada to Campobello Island, there's a bog there that is a bog with mostly empetrum, different plant instead of the sphagnum moss. And that is a very interesting bog. And then there's a new bog up there on Campobello. They have just opened, and I can't remember the name of it. I haven't been there yet. I plan to go soon. So those are very close bogs. Vermont has a lot of bogs, like the Esqua Bog, where you can go and see the showy lady slippers in the spring, and some different ones over there. Like Colchester Bog, really short little boardwalk. In Maine, also in Trenton, there's the Trenton Community Forest Trail, and they have a little boardwalk out to a bog that I went to late in the year, so it was like, well, it was full of trees. We'll have to go back and visit that one in the spring.
I just
Those are
thought of, I don't know if it's technically a bog, but
Mhm.
it's very boggy, and we call it a bog boardwalk over
Yeah.
at Firth Talalay, which is a property that the trust has in Surrey. So it's
Okay,
across
yeah,
from Carter Nature Preserve, which is the coast shoreline, and
right.
it's very, very wet in there. And I know our stewardship team just put in brand new boardwalks throughout there,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's really
Okay.
nice. It's a beautiful bird area. There's a lot of birds there. It's really, really very quiet. I don't know if it's actually like a bog. It's certainly different than the one in Orono, but
Yeah.
it's a really lovely walk through a very wet,
Oh,
boggy.
yeah. All the bogs are different. They're not all the same. They have their plant communities that are different. So what's the name of that one again?
Firth, Furth,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Talalay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Really,
I
really
will check.
nice
Yeah, I'll
area.
check that out. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you should.
Yeah, this is just such a spectacular representation of a bog, Karen. I just like all your pictures and just the diversity of plant life there and just how uniquely it's adapted to that particular habitat. And it's so amazing.
Yeah, the pictures are amazing, Karen.
It is amazing. I can't wait. May 1st. Can't
Yeah.
be here too soon. So much to check out. And you know, and I really appreciate being able to put this talk together to get my thoughts together for how I can be a better docent and appreciate the plants a lot better. Thank you.
No, no, thank you. Yeah, I totally understand why it's the type of place that keeps drawing someone back again and again and just learning more and seeing different things in different seasons. And so thank you very much, Karen. Let's see. It looks like I don't see any. I think we've answered all of the questions.
Okay, I'll just make one more comment. So
Yes.
that white-fringed bog orchid. The white-fringed bog orchid mainly grows in open peat bogs. A large study in Quebec found that the presence and abundance of white-fringed bog orchid was a strong indicator that the sphagnum bog was less disturbed or influenced by human activity. This species could therefore serve as an indicator for rapid assessment of sphagnum bog integrity. So I just read that the other day, and then when I talk with people about the bog lovers, you just get on that bog, and there's something there that's like that we all know about in nature that just draws you back again and again. It's like when you work in the soil and all the things that are in the soil give you some benefit. So I think I was reading about that bog, that white fringe bog orchid in that bog is it's not disturbed, and there's just something there that's really nice to experience. Thank you.
There is another comment that just came up that said, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who listened, and thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording. It looks like the questions have been answered. So I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody for now, unless other questions pop up. But I'm gonna hit stop record. So if you need to go, thank you so much for joining us, and look for us next month, right, Leah?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely, Brooke. And thank you, everyone. And yeah, just looking forward to next month. We will have Friends from the Field coming up on Tuesday next month. So it's a little different. I believe that is May 12th, Tuesday, May 12th. And we're going to have with us UMaine PhD student James Longo. This next Friends from the Field will be leading up to the Wings, Waves, and Woods festival that we have going on down here at the island. And so kind of the Tuesday prior to that festival, we'll get to learn from James about birdsong and how birds communicate with each other, and just kind of the beauty of birdsong in general. So looking forward to that. And yes, I think that kind of covers it for today. So thank you so much again, Karen, and thank you everyone for joining. Hope you have a wonderful evening, and thanks again, Brooke, for everything.
Yeah, thank you both. Bye, everybody. I'm gonna hit
Bye,
stop.
everybody. See you next